Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 19th, 2024
Recording in progress.
meeting of the Housing and Development Commission. I can see we have a quorum, but we'll have a roll call.
Chair Ravel,
Here.
Councilmember Heracariz,
Here.
Hugo Rodriguez,
Here.
Fran Sweeney, Chloe Thurston,
Here.
Joanne Salome.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. So we have, first on our agenda, we have public comment, but we have two sessions of public comment for, oops, I need to, yikes, oh, pooey. Darn. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So we have, for our first public comment, this is comments about the draft 2025 to 2029 Consolidated Plan, the draft 2025 Action Plan, and the draft Amended Citizen Participation Plan. And I have one person who's signed up to speak for this public comment. That's Marcella Anderson Robinson. Would you like to come up to the podium and give us your comments? Oh, okay. There we go.
Thank you.
That's fine.
I'm here on behalf of my family member who is homeless with a disabled child. She's a part of the homeless coalition over here on Dewey somewhere. Been there for almost a little over a year. And her and the baby still homeless. And I'd like to see the new proposal go into effect where the people over there at the coalition are more professional in following through and making their clients feel human and give them the subsidies that you guys have allocated for. I don't believe that that's being distributed properly. You can go sometimes and they can't even get diapers for their babies. I'm in a subsidized housing, and of course they shouldn't be there with me. So that's creating a problem, but not really a problem, because management has a human side. But it is to the point where she will threaten to put me out. But I can't let them ride the train. That's my only daughter and my first grandson. And he's sick. He's at the Central School up here on Ridge and Central, the AB school. He has a learning disability, preemie, and he just made 4 today, to be honest. But I'd like to see better reform over there at that coalition, because to me, it's not being followed through. You don't push, you tell people she had a caseworker, good caseworker, but then you switched and now it's nobody, and when you go, they so unhumane, caring about you telling them what you still out here trying to do and better yourself. Even Salvation Army, I went there on Sherman. They didn't even open the door. Buzzed the bell, but saw me in my scooter and never even came to open the door to ask me what I wanted or nothing, because my management sent me there. So I like to see the services that you all are allocating for, the follow-throughs to make sure these victims are not victimized and traumatized, even more falling through the crack. My heart breaks every night for my child.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And that's what I come here to say. If it's anything you all could do to see that those type of services are pushed forward in the future for people who are following through and trying.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I
Thank-
appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Tina, did you want to speak to the Consolidated Plan?
Hi, good evening, Tina Payton. So, yes, I would like to speak to that. Kind of backing up what she said, I'm here again advocating for us landlords that could house people like her daughter and granddaughter. You don't give us anything. once again, we have luxury living here in Evanston and very little affordable units. There's very few landlords that even take any vouchers from Section 8 or anything, and we don't get help. So we can't keep up on the bills. If you're trying to ask us to take lower rent, how are we supposed to pay the escalating bills and support people like who she's discussing? So I've been here for many, many years saying the same thing, but there's nothing on the agenda ever about helping the small landlord. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else here want to speak to the consolidated plan? Then we will close that public comment. And then now we have just regular public comment about other items on our agenda. Yeah. So, Marcella, did you want to speak to something besides what you've already said?
I want to say this in humanality form. Jewels up here on Chicago Avenue is turning into a haven for homeless people. You barely can get in and out the doors these days, and I'm sorry to see that. You see mothers with children and everything. It just seems like it's heartbreaking. It's no real resolution. I know you open up churches and give blah, blah, but that need to be really activated forcefully, because it's becoming like a nuisance. But you don't want to say that because you could be one step away from being homeless. But there needs to be something to address that issue on a serious level. Other than that, you're going to start having crimes here. And your beautiful Evanston is not going to stay beautiful. These people have to survive. And any piece of get them back on their feet, that will help. I look at my daughter. She's so embarrassed and ashamed. She a college person and all kinds of stuff. Bad marriage. Baby after the marriage and all that. One misfortune. But it don't make her not willing to try. So I'm asking for your help to see people as people and not just as a number.
Right, okay.
I'm in my complex, and, you know, like I said, management working good with me, but I can't say how long. She could evict me today or tomorrow because I'm in violation of what they say your lease is.
Okay.
So I appreciate whatever you guys could do to help facilitate, you know, her finding something or helping me find a way to help better her and self as well. Because grandbaby, he don't deserve that.
Right.
I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
And then Tina, did you have regular public comment?
Yeah, hi. I hope, so I was at the special meeting about inspection. I hope that we have future meetings about inspection. It should be more participation from the landlord. It's very lopsided. And I have asked for years that we have an antiquated system. It's on paper. They come to do the inspection, they write it on the paper, they send it to you in the mail 3 weeks later, violation. When I do Section 8 inspection, they have iPads. They have a checklist. They can right away tell you what your violation is or if you passed. I don't even have a thing to say if I passed the inspection. I don't get anything in the mail unless I get a violation. We need to have better system. I've been asking for that for years. It needs to be not just targeted towards certain landlords, which I'm one of them. And also, I got a call from the police the other day, and he thought my building was having a problem because he saw a name. He doesn't even have a way to identify the landlord in that property. He thought it was mine, which it wasn't. but he had a situation going on with the property and didn't know the owner. Something is wrong with that. So the city needs to do a better job of identifying landlords, because a lot of the people that are causing the problem are absentee landlords, and you're not doing anything about it. So we need to have a better discussion with the landlords and an inspection, because this is very critical about their procedures. Thank you.
Great, well, thank you. Thank you for those suggestions. All right, I think now we are ready to move on to the items on our agenda. And the first item is approval of the minutes of our October 15th meeting. Do I have a motion? Someone?
I will move approval of the minutes from the
October 15th.
October 15th.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any, does anybody have a correction or a comment?
Yeah, I was not here, and I'm not listed as not here.
Okay, we will make
I
that.
disappeared from the committee again, it seems.
Oh, okay, well, we will make that correction. Okay, otherwise, then, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no? Okay, so the minutes are approved as corrected. Now we're to more meaty items, and the first one is the renewal of our contract for landlord-tenant services with Metropolitan Tenant Organization and the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing.
I will move approval for renewal contract for landlord-tenant services with Metropolitan Tenants Organization and Law Center for Better Housing for January 5th, 2025 through December 31st of 2025.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and a presentation?
Good evening. I'm here to present the application for renewal for an up to amount of $72,500 for the renewal of contract for landlord-tenant services for the Metropolitan Tenants Organization and the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing. This is funded through the Affordable Housing Fund. The city has contracted with MTO and the Law Center for Better Housing for landlord-tenant services since 2018. And this up to amount of $72,500 covers 12 months from January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, which includes a base scope of work of $46,800. $36,800 for MTO and $10,000 for the Law Center for Better Housing. And it includes operating a free hotline, a pilot in-person counseling for 3 months, responding to landlord-tenant inquiries received through the city's 311 system, and coordinating at least 6 to 2-hour trainings for Evanston, which have been slated for Q1 of 2025. And this is to help support the implementation of the updated residential tenant landlord ordinance. There's also an additional services amount of up to $25,700, which includes items such as mediation between landlords and tenants, tenant organizing, legal representation of low-income Evanston tenants, and an up to amount of $18,000 to fund a client-facing web application, and an up to amount of $2,500 for the extension of the walking hour pilot program. Phil Devon from MTO is here to answer any questions from the committee.
Ugo, do you have a question?
I can come up with a question.
Oh, okay, I thought, is that, oh, whose light is that then? Is that, then. I just turned mine on. Yeah. Well, there's a light on that, and Ugo, you're the only person close to that, but that's okay.
I don't have my light.
Well, okay, let's Fran. Fran, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you very much. There's a light and then there's a mic. Thank you. I'm I'm just wondering if this is enough money for you folks, because I ran numbers, and there's a hotline that's open 5 days a week for 4 hours, and if I did the math correct, the proposed cost to cover that would only cover 16 hours a week. Where do you get other funding from other sources?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And that helps cover, we get other funding specifically for the hotline that helps offset and cover. the
Right.
overtime.
In terms of the training for the new law coming in, how will the publicity get out for people to attend that training?
I think it'll be a combination. I know we'll be working with the city, which I presume will be put out on the website. We'll do some extra advertising, and I know MTO will be putting that out through its channels as well. And with our partners, Open Communities, Northwestern, and other folks within Evanston itself. And we're working on finalizing those materials now, and we're looking forward to that. It's an exciting training for us because there's some really important updates that people should know about.
I would totally agree. There's some very exciting updates.
Yes.
That's all I have right now.
Okay, Chloe.
Just a couple of questions. Oops, there we go. So first, so one of the services entails working with the city to maintain current landlord-tenant information on the city and MTO's websites. And so I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about that, partly in light of Tina's question about does this extend to a registry, or like what's the extent of landlord and tenant information? That is this just about the RLTO, or is it about sort of actual names of landlords and such?
Yeah, as far as speaking strictly for MTO, it would just be information about the RLTO. I don't know.
Okay.
I can take that, Phil, if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, we sometimes rely and work with MTO to make sure that if there's anything going on as far as rent assistance or landlord information that is not specific to Evanston but could be helpful, that we edit on the website. So that's part of that kind of advice.
Okay.
when
So
it
it's like
comes-
landlord policy information, not information
About
Okay.
landlords.
I
yeah.
was just curious about that. And then thinking about Fran's point about sort of the trainings and combining that with the web application development, is there any thought, maybe I missed it, about sort of having a video of some of the trainings too, so that people can access them at any time?
Yes, and I believe those are being recorded and will be available for people
Yeah.
to distribute afterwards.
So some of the things we have put on hold a little bit the training because we were all working on the RLTO and wanted to make sure that we waited for the new ordinance. But some of the things we've discussed with Phil is not only do we post the training so they're available on the website, on YouTube, things like that, but also trying to move some to kind of like snippet videos on specific questions so they can be reused
That's a great-
throughout
yeah.
the life of the ordinance.
Thanks.
Chair, well, I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. And my light is not working, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, so I have a couple of questions. If you could, if you don't mind sharing what's the organization's budget, just to kind of give you some perspective of what the $72,000 would do in relation to your total budget.
Well, I can assure you, I am not the budget man, but I know our
Just
budget
roughly.
is well below $1 million. I know it's not over $1 million. I think it's probably closer to 700,000.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Over $500,000, definitely not close to $1 million.
Okay, thank you. That gives a perspective of the size of the organization and so forth and the work that they can do. I have a follow-up question in regards to the education classes that you will have in regarding the RLTO. Connected, though, not necessarily the same question, but it is in regards to, do you reach out to the landlords when there is a problem that you identify with the tenant that calls you, if it's pertinent to that landlord to try to resolve the issue? Is there a mediation that occurs between MTO being the mediator in that case, between the landlord and the tenant. If there is an issue that can be corrected, of course, if it's safety or health issues, then that's a different story. It needs to be corrected by the landlord. But if there is anything that could be mediated, do you have the capacity and the ability and the will to become mediators in that instance?
Yes, the short answer is yes. One, we always try to work with folks to try to empower themselves in a sense, tell them, here are the tools you have, and let folks try to work things out. There are instances where relationships have broke down, and we can step in to help, help folks resolve something without it getting any worse. I do that through my eviction prevention program very often, where I talk to landlords and tenants with permission, of course, and then we oftentimes, resolve things without them getting any worse. We also do, as part of this contract, provide actual, more, formal mediation through one of our staff person who's a trained and certified mediator, so that's available as well.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And this is mostly for the city, not necessarily for MTO, and it is to ask if there is a plan to try to implement educational courses for landlords as well to the new implementation of the RLTO that is coming up, and what is the outreach that is being done, if any, to the landlords?
Yeah,
Especially
so
small landlords.
that's currently being worked out, but there is a definite plan of doing outreach. We do have a landlord-specific newsletter that's been recently updated because the landlord registration database has been updated recently. So there's definite option to do outreach through that to landlords, and webinars historically, as well as with this through MTO, have been done for separate audience. So we've done some for tenants, but those webinars also the trainings include specific trainings for landlords, because it's the same information, but it's discussed slightly from a different angle. Yeah. So MTO will help with those as well.
On that new database that has been created, on a personal note, I must have done something tremendously wrong, because I have never received a landlord newsletter. And have you? Okay.
There hasn't been a newsletter very recently.
But there have been other outreach, like, for instance, for the rental assistance program through COVID, which, I'm a small landlord, and I have never received have not seen anything of that sort. And I'm saying this just with the spirit that we really need to make sure that there is a registration form. All rental units need to be registered with the city of Evanston. We pay a fee for that. So out of that, there should be a registry.
That is what I'm talking about.
But
that is
so there is nothing
recently,
that has been sent recently.
Right.
Then.
There hasn't been a newsletter recently. There will be one as part of this program.
Okay.
The registration was made, it used to be optional for email. It's now a requirement that was done a little while back. I think it was maybe a year ago. And the team that's managing the rental registration, has gone through the process of taking all those emails and making sure that we're able to do outreach when we have information about the RLTO. So you're right in line with what we're trying to do.
Okay, very good. Now, getting back to MTO. So I'm done with questions. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Fran, you had your light next?
I do, and I have a follow-up question to what you just asked. How will the information be distributed for informing residents about the RLTO, and how will we know when that's happening?
So that's still in discussion, but the usual process includes multiple mention in the city newsletter, usually social media accounts, updating our website. Potentially we'll on projects like this that are big, we'll try to also reach out to council members to see if they're willing to include it in their ward newsletters as well, things like that.
Okay, thanks. Second question, back to you. There was reference about an app for Evanston and some suggestions. Will there be an app like similar to Cook County?
I don't think that's been fully decided, just because what the costs and what it would entail was still kind of in the works. And I think, quite honest, we put the brakes on moving forward because of the RLTO implementations, and we didn't want to do any work on something that would have to change essentially right away. So there is the possibility of either kind of a chat bot or an app, the way MTO operates one for Chicago residents, but it's still, very early on. I don't think any decisions have been made, of course.
So I guess it depends if you're asking is there going to be a mobile-based application or if there's going to be a website-based application. A website-based, absolutely. Application available specifically on a mobile phone, that's not something we've discussed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Harakaris.
Yeah, I just want to say, I always find that this is money well spent in our budget. I know that I, send a bunch of constituents to you folks, usually in a capacity where they either don't know what legal standing they have, or they have found, an unresponsive landlord, or they just don't know that, the intricacies of their lease and everything. And, it's really helpful because it takes myself out of I don't know enough to give them legal advice, and it's really helpful. And so I just wanted to point that out, that I think it's a really powerful tool for, residents, and I'm glad that we do this every year. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne.
Yeah, there was an issue in there about you're asking for a lower amount of insurance than what the city is proposing. Is that something you would negotiate with the city? Was it liability insurance?
I believe it was. I haven't been involved in that, but I believe it's.
That's pretty standard. That happens
55.
every year, and that's usually not an issue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for all those good questions. So I think we're ready to vote, and this would be to recommend to City Council that we approve this renewal of the contract. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
no. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right, next, could we have a motion for our renewal of funding to administer our inclusionary housing wait list?
I motion to, I don't know how to do this, approve a renewal of funding for our inclusionary housing waitlist.
I'll second.
That's good. And we have a second. Okay. Staff, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Marion Johnson, Housing Grant Supervisor. I am here to discuss the renewal of the Inclusionary Housing Waitlist Management contract, which would be with CPA, Community Partners for Affordable Housing, who has been managing this waitlist since 2017. They are requesting funding in the amount of $80,000 for calendar year 2025. They currently manage 78 units. There are 3 new units that are coming online in 2025, including our first for sale unit, which will likely require a little bit more work on both sides since it's brand new. And then there's also the additional work that will be involved in building up the wait list and making sure doing additional outreach to be ready for 2026, where we expect there will be increased units for the IHO. The amount is an increase of $10,000 from the amount that was requested for this year. Staff believes this is very much in line with what is currently being spent. Historically, CPA has been billing us less than they actually expend on this work. So we are requesting the increase for this contract. There will be all the work I've mentioned and the additional units. There's additional compliance as well as units are being brought into compliance from prior condo deconversions we talked about previously. And I've got Amy Kaufman, the Vice President of Communication Relation from CPA, that's here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any comments or questions? Yeah, Chloe.
I have an informational question. I was curious about the for sale house and what, I mean, it seems to some extent obvious that it would be more difficult to, more complicated, but I would love to know sort of precisely why.
You mean what the
what's
process
entailed.
looks like
Yeah,
in
what's the
terms of-
process?
You know, it's really not that different. I don't know if you're familiar with our community land trust program, but it's
Not yours, no.
Oh, okay, so we have a community land trust program, as many of you know, that's been operating in Evanston for over a decade, that has somewhere between 15 and 20 for sale units. As those come up, and the process isn't really any different for inclusionary housing, we begin outreach and marketing. We direct people to our information session where they learn about the program. These are permanently restricted resale properties. So it's really important that people understand what they're buying, because then when they go to sell it, it's going to be at a resale restricted price. So that's the first step, and then we sort of get them into the application process and see what they could qualify for, see what they need to work on in order to qualify, refer them to a participating lender so they can see if they can get a mortgage. But it really follows very similar steps to our community land trust program. We have quite a few inclusionary for sale units that we help administer in Highland Park. So this would not be the first time that we would have. We've in fact done, I'm doing a resale now of an inclusionary unit in Highland Park. We've seen the transaction both from the beginning and resale, and it works very similarly. The restrictions are a little bit different, but it works very similarly to the way the land trust works.
Great. Joanne?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have any idea of how many people voluntarily take themselves off the list? Or do you just find out when you call someone to see if they're interested in a unit?
For the waiting list, you mean? So nobody gets taken off the waiting list unless they ask to, or they don't respond to a waitlist update. So we recently completed the outreach portion of our waitlist update. We tried to contact people 4 times. Those people between now and the end of the year who did not respond to any of those 4 outreaches will be removed from the waiting list. But other than that, unless somebody requests, we don't remove people. There are many times that people receive marketing materials about available units and they don't respond to that information, but we do not take them off the waiting list, even if it's multiple times. We just leave everybody where they are. And when we do remove people from the waiting list, we put them in a different spreadsheet. We know when they got on the waiting list and we have all their information. If we made a mistake and somebody comes back to us and says, hey, I sent in my waitlist update, and we go, oh yeah, you did, we'll be able to put them back on the list in the same place that they were. So we never delete anybody. We just move it to a different list. It makes it more efficient. You can't keep building thousands of people on a waiting list. It's not efficient administration, so that's why we do it.
So you're planning to build up the wait list for the units that are coming online in 2026?
We never stop building up the waiting list. We always have marketing going on. We do, outreach in Evanston. We use a digital service called Avail to put out available units. Many people who will respond to that outreach will not really be responding for that specific unit, but they will want to get on the waiting list for future units. So we never stop marketing, but certainly when you know there's sort of a bubble of units coming up, you will increase those efforts so that you're making sure you're targeting pockets of the population that could conceivably qualify. Depending on what the targeted income is of those units, you would make some choices about where to focus your marketing. But yes, there will be increased marketing efforts. And then next year, you have a lot of units now through this program. So there's a lot of turnovers. There's the question that you asked of the gentleman from MTO about, do you get involved with trying to help the tenant work out problems with the property manager? We do that all day, every day. There's just a lot of issues that come up with tenants and property managers. Sometimes it's during renewal time, sometimes it's not, but we really do our best to try and offer whatever kind of support we can. And so that's all, that all takes time.
Yeah, definitely.
Chair Ravella,
Yes?
I'm sorry, but my light is not working.
Okay,
Yeah, thank
Go
you.
ahead, sorry.
I have a couple of questions, and I had the opportunity to the request of Chair Ravella. I spoke with somebody in your organization recently, and he went into really good detail with me about the land trust. I was concerned about the the formula for the resale of the units that somebody bought under the affordability of housing through SEPA. So I got that. And you talk about maybe 15 or 20 units that are in the norm of resale.
Well, that's what we have now.
On
Yes,
and off.
hopefully
Oh.
it'll grow over time, but yes.
That'd be great, right?
Yes.
So hopefully it will. How many rental units do you normally have in Evanston, or do you have? I only saw 3 or 4 units available at the time I look at your website.
Right. So there's 2 different ways that SEPA is involved with rental housing in Evanston. We have something like 10 rental units that we developed in Evanston. A while ago, those have been existing, and those are rented through SEPA, and they go through the SEPA rental
Screening.
application process and screening, and they work directly with our property management team. But then there's the inclusionary housing units, which don't belong to us, right? Those belong to the property manager, and we help administer those in the sense that we market, we identify qualified applicants through the pre-screening and the full application process. We work with the developers to, try and make it happen, that somebody can go from being qualified by us to being qualified by the property manager, and then we deal with the turnovers and the issues that come up. So those are really different things. One is really in the property management bucket, and one is really in the inclusionary housing bucket, but we don't own those.
And you don't manage those either?
We don't manage those.
But in total, what's the number of units that we're talking about that you have under your program, not
So
management
inclusionary housing
necessarily?
is 78. We have another 10 or 12 or 15 on the rental side.
All in
And then we
Evanston.
have, in Evanston. And then we have the for sale community land trust units that's somewhere between 15 and 20 in Evanston. We have those in many communities in the North Shore.
How soon do they sell?
It really depends. There's one available now that just went under contract.
Okay, good.
That's going to close in a few weeks. It really depends. There is always an extraordinary amount of interest because buying a house at that price in Evanston is not a usual course of business. But there are very definite criteria and guidelines, and so somebody has to qualify, and that is a more difficult hoop to jump through. So it's never finding interested people. It's finding interested people who are really ready to move forward to buy a home.
A couple more questions, if you don't mind, very quickly, but this is very relevant to everything that comes from the lack of affordable housing. So when you have a tenant qualified through your screening process and application process, do you see a lot of reluctance especially from the inclusionary, the IHO units, from that owner or manager to actually try to avoid renting to that family, that individual, whatever the case might be? That's not relevant. But do you see reluctance from that side to accept that tenant?
It's such a broad range. I would say that most landlords understand the program,
So
and they
mostly, yeah.
understand that implementing criteria that are very difficult for applicants to clear is not going to get that unit rented very fast. So on the other hand, the ones who start out with maybe criteria that are going to be difficult for those on the waiting list to meet, that's the situation where we work with the developer to help them understand that these are the adjustments that we think they could make to help identify qualified tenants a little bit quicker. We can't make them do it. We can, lead them to water, so to speak, but I'll give you an example. Sometimes, we will think, the credit score that they're requiring is just too high. And so that can delay identifying we'll identify somebody, but then they'll go to the property manager and there'll be an issue. Well, if we see that repeated a couple of times, then we can have a conversation with the developer about what we think maybe they could do to help get that leased. There's a decent-sized building that had a lot of units this year that lowered, when they heard that from us, they lowered their credit score, and they leased their units really quickly. So, if there's that kind of back and forth and you have that kind of openness, they do understand they need to lease those units, and they do understand they're not going to get out of the requirement to have these units. So they really, I think we go into it understanding that we're all on the same team. We all want to get these units
So
leased.
either they adjust or they keep the
They
unit
do.
vacant.
I mean, the ones who take a little bit longer, it's going to take them a little bit longer, but
they're gonna lose some money.
we've had enough experience now that we can say, look, the gap between the minimum income needed and the maximum income is too small, right? You got to lower your rent because you need to widen that gap. We can't raise the maximum. It is what it is, but you can lower the minimum if you lower your rent a little bit. So we'll make the suggestion, and most of the time, the landlords will come back to you and say, okay, that's a good suggestion. So it works out okay.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, committee, can we have a vote then on recommending to City Council approval of the renewal of the contract for the management of our inclusionary housing waitlist? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, thank you very much for coming.
thank you.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to turn our attention to some of our gigantic reading lists that we had for our meeting this evening. And so first we're going to hear about the 2025-2029 Consolidated Plan.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to give you a short presentation on the Consolidated Plan and a little bit of the Citizen Participation Plan. I strongly encourage the committee members to review and read the draft plan that was posted and included in the memo. A lot of the items are not going to be new. Draft allocation we've discussed in the last meetings. But we wanted to give you at least some highlights around some of the information that is covered under the needs and market analysis section of the plan. I don't think it's working. Next slide. Okay. So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, this is our draft consolidated plan for the timeframe 2025-2029 that we are to submit to HUD, draft, approve, and submit to HUD as part of the funding process for CDBG Home. We are not planning ESG. As you know, we may get ESG, but we'll have to address that if we're that lucky. Next slide. The budget assumption have not changed since we last discussed. So as mentioned, we're talking about no ESG. We are targeting $275,000 of home and no program income. Program income is usually fairly low, and we're changing how we're using program income. So for the time being, we're just not going to include it in the calculation. We also expect that based on the national political context, home is likely to get cut quite drastically. So we don't want to be add any more than we need. And then CDBG, we are currently planning a decrease by about 20%, but it's actually looking to be more because we received very little program income this year compared to previous years. So based on that, we could not project program income at the same level as usual. So that's adding this additional increase we haven't discussed before. CDBG is very much a moving target. So we're being cautious, but this is based on the best of the information that we have right now. Things could change, and we could get a flat allocation to last year, and we could get some cuts as well. But right now, we're projecting a 20% decrease.
So these figures are not approved.
Sorry?
Sorry, so the figures are not approved, the ones you show there.
No, when we do a plan, it's all estimated. So this is a particularly difficult exercise this year because we're in the 5-year planning process. So we have to estimate for the next 5 years, but we don't really have a good handle on where Congress is going with budget appropriations. A quick reminder that the primary source of data is HUD required, so it is the ACS, American Community Survey, from 2016 to 2020, and may differ from other plans that are currently being discussed at the city level. And some of the data has changed quite a bit, and in those cases, we tried to bring it up in the narrative of the plan, because obviously it does not include a lot of the impact of COVID, as an example. That's standard when it comes to those HUD plans. This is nothing new. This is data that is required and pulled automatically. This slide is just a reminder of the households we're talking about. So the plan is specifically discussing the needs of households in Evanston that are low moderate income, so under 80% area median income. We are talking about 11,000 households. 65 to 70% of them are housing cost burden. And about 3,000 renter household and 1,000 owner households are severely cost burden, meaning they spend more than 50% of their income on housing. Okay, so as far as population trend, what we found is that Evanston's population, based on the data again that we're working with, is down about 2%. The number of households are down about 5%. And the median income has gone up from 70,000 in 2009 to 82,000 in the latest data that we're using here. So that's up 18%. The composition of low moderate income households is about 27% small family, 4% large family, 17% senior, and 53% other.
Ask what the definition of small versus large family is.
Yeah, the definition of small family is under 2 if there's a senior of over 62 years old in the household, or a household of 3 or 4. Yeah.
And you also have a category for seniors, though.
Right. So that would be solely senior households. Mm-hmm. And those are categories that are set by HUD. We have the majority of low moderate income households that are concentrated in Ward 2, 5, and 8. That hasn't really changed. And we're seeing that BIPOC residents are falling disproportionately below the poverty line. Black, Indigenous, and people of color. 31,000 total housing units, 57% of them are owner-occupied, 43% renters. We're also finding that as far as the housing, there's only 16% of Evanston units that are valued under $200,000. And that's mostly usually smaller condo units, so not very suitable for family households. The majority of the cost burden for owner household is for smaller households and senior households. We're seeing they're the most cost burden when it comes to owners. And BIPOC renters and owners are disproportionately impacted by housing problems. Housing problems, as defined by HUD, is cost burden, overcrowding, lack of plumbing, facility, kitchen, bathroom, those kind of problems. We have also found in this report that Hispanic households are disproportionately affected by housing problems, and we've seen no change in the number of housing choice vouchers being available since the last plan. So we didn't see a decrease, but we also did not see an increase. The median home price is around $500,000, so very much outside of the range of the population we're talking about tonight. Older housing stock, we have more than 50% of the Evanston housing that was built before 1950. That also adds to the maintenance cost and ability to afford a home when the median housing is $500,000 and also requires great renovation budget. We have a housing stock that's split almost a third between single unit 2 to 19, so smaller to medium multifamily buildings, and 20 plus unit buildings. And we've seen that between this plan's number and the last plan, the most of the growth has been coming from multifamily rental buildings, larger buildings usually. One item to note, we have approximately 50 units that are coming out of affordability in the coming years during the plan. We're aware of that and looking at solutions to be able to keep some or all in a new program to keep them affordable. A lot of them are part of the NSP2 program, and so they had affordability restrictions with a timeline associated with the funding, and so that's coming out of affordability.
Mostly from that recession then?
Yeah.
And so what kinds of ideas do we have for how to address that?
Well, there's Sarah's working on different programs. There's potential of acquiring some of those property as part of maybe some of the actions that would be coming from the strategic housing plan, using some of the affordable housing funds, different type of option to be able to find ways to connect those properties with other potential affordable housing owners that might be able to keep them affordable as well. Sarah, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, that really is what we're looking to do, is find a way to get the funding to acquire them. The owners are interested in selling at this point, and it would be one of the things that these provide is a fair number of larger units, which are always desirable. And one of the other things we want to be able to do is maintain the affordability of the units so that we can maintain the people who are currently living there. We don't want them to be displaced or anything like that. And the actual burn off of the affordability periods is still, the first one is 2026, I think, and the last one, which is a real outlier, is 2031. But there's a clump of them coming up, and there's a possibility that we can acquire them throughout a period of time before they actually fall out of their, before their affordability periods, and which makes it easier for us to transition and make sure, because we would be working with our nonprofit housing providers who will maintain the affordability and make sure that we comply with the requirements that are going to be ending, but then also that we can convert and have agreements for affordability based on what we see as the needs in the community and what we work out.
Because one of your draft talks about an HODC property coming out of affordability next year in 2025.
Which one is that? I'm not sure which one is listed.
I don't remember offhand which specific property it is.
With HODC, we're not really concerned because
will they maintain it?
Yes,
themselves? Yeah,
because
right.
they're maintaining things as long as they are the owners. That's their
Right,
mission. So
right.
I'm not worried about that.
Great. Okay, thanks.
There is an interesting group of properties called Oak Tree Village. It's a series of townhomes that are along Simpson, west of Green Bay, and then down Ashland to Foster, and then actually there's a bunch of them are kind of off an alley back there too. That's part of the old railroad right-of-way area that was, and they are family-size units. I don't know, larger units. I don't know the exact bedroom mix. They were developed, I think, place in the late 60s or early 70s, and it was a private developer, and they have a HAP contract, which is the project-based vouchers that HUD gives to maintain the affordability. And they were on the market for a while. They went off the market because nobody was willing to pay the asking price they were asking, the price they were asking. But this is another thing that we're looking at. I don't know that we or working with any of our partners would be able to acquire those, but these are the types of things that we're really trying to watch for, because no matter how much new affordable housing we get, if we're losing,
Don't want to lose
it's a real balancing act. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So we've included a couple of the maps that are part of the posted draft plan. This is a new feature that we were excited to be able to include. This one is the median home value that's actually pulling American Community Survey data. That's the 5 years, 2018 to 2022. To give some context around affordability throughout Evanston and the disparities we're seeing between different areas. And particularly the areas that are higher price being also the areas that are particularly zoned for single family as well. And then the second plan that we have, the second map, sorry, that we have here is around the percentage of rental housing that's older, that was built before 1950, to give us an idea of concentration around where the older buildings are showing. Next slide, please.
Mary, could I ask you, what are the prices coming from that you are gathering for?
The American Community Survey data.
Who are they?
So that's data provided by HUD. That's a national survey process.
Mm-hmm.
The data that we have usually in here is not necessarily
Market data?
yeah.
But those are the true values, though.
Exactly. So that's actually, there's, in the next slide, we talk about that because as we ran into a challenge around, particularly around rents, where the data we were getting from the ACS was the median contract rent was listed as $1,355, which is laughable.
Yeah.
So we add context. That's data that we are pulling, and it's pulling, so we have to include it, but we provided context and a narrative around all that specifically for this.
So the reason I question that is, and obviously I only know market data.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, I don't know where this comes from, but if we're coming out of something that is not real, how real then our planning is going to get?
Well, it gives us, so it's not, the fact that it's not 100% market data does not necessarily mean it's useless. So it helps us at
No, I
least
didn't say
track.
it's useless,
Oh, no, I
but
know, I
yeah.
understand. It helps us track the difference over time between, so for the same reason that 1350 for the rent was not really real data, it helped us understand how it tracked compared to previous years and where it was at. It also gives a picture, because if we're looking at market data only, then this is a tool that provides us more detail, granular detail as far as like pricing per census block, which is something that's hard to find because that's a way to look at data that's not necessarily available with market rate information. And then market rate information, oftentimes when we're looking at it, it skews because it's recent sales, and that doesn't necessarily include people that have been in their home and are still, that includes kind of everybody. So it's imperfect information, but still provides some information around Evanston housing prices.
It's good to know that there is somebody analyzing those two different factors, and I'm sure any other factor that could come into play, and not just taking this as a universal truth.
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think what we try to do is, one of the key thing with the ACS is at least it gives us a baseline where when we talk about median home value, we're always referring to the same one, because one of the risks as well is when you look at market rate or anything like that is, am I looking at this source or that source? Is everybody speaking the same language? So over time, it can muddle the message. So at least it gives us a sole source where we can really truly compare. Yeah. But that does not stop us from looking at the other source and market rate to really understand where we're at.
Can I just add a little bit about the American Community Survey is a very small sampling of the entire United States that is statistically, then they use statistical methods to project all the data that some of the data they collect. And one of the things that I think happens is when the people who are more likely to respond to these surveys are people who've been living in a place for a while. This is something we saw. It was more often what people responding to the census were people who'd been living here for a while. I mean, it's a pattern. And so I think what happens is we get people saying, oh, I'm paying this rent now. And remember that these ACS data are 5-year averages, because if you use the individual ACS years, the margin of error, in the projections becomes huge. So it's really, you have to compare it to other HUD data, as Marion said. But it is, and it doesn't take into account, because I think many of the people who respond have been people who have been where they are a long time. They're the ones whose rents have likely been raised the least, because if they're
Or
good tenants, all the
long-term
things
ownership.
exactly,
Right.
and long-term owners, so that they'd
But,
be running.
but I
into that.
think that the city has an incredible source of data, and it is that every single property that sells in the city of Evanston pays a stamp. And on that payment, it's included what kind of property it is it a single family, is a condo, is a two-bedroom condo, is a two-bedroom condo with 2 bathrooms, or does it have a garage, doesn't have a garage. So all that data comes to the city on a daily basis. So I think that and I'm just saying this to use it as a contrast to analyzing what you're giving us here. And the reason why it flagged me is because I know that those prices are not even close to the prices that are on the market. So I think that it'd be good for the city to also take a look at other data. Maybe if this is just a hard requirement and we have to do it this way because this is the way that we have to do it, well, so be it. But if we really want to do something intelligent, I think that there should be some contrast analysis to see what other data we have availability of.
I agree.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
I just had a comment. So we all just learned that we hired a new staff person who will be picking up the open data project that used to be on the website. And I think this is a good example of, we have disparate data sets, not all in one place. And we could definitely do better to, centralize that and have it be available for, I think, there's a lot of, things we can glean, different staff from different departments, and also so the residents kind of are able to see a full picture of what's going on. But it's a good point.
Thank you. So similarly, I mentioned just before, we were talking about we were pulling the data for the median contract rent, which is showing from HUD data as $1,355, which is not accurate. So the 2023 1-year ACS is showing it at $1,630. Zillow and other rent applications are showing it closer for new lease to $2,200. So that gives you kind of an idea of how the data can sometimes be skewed. And similarly, the small area rents, which are HUD provided for 1 bedroom, not even just median, but just for a 1 bedroom, which are HUD limits, that's $1,500. So that gives us an idea of how rents have increased and where rents are sitting when it comes to Evanston. Since the last plan, we've seen a 63% drop in units that are under $1,000. And then, as always, we're seeing that studios in 1 bedroom are mostly rentals, and 3 bedrooms are mostly ownership. That has not changed. However, we did see a small increase in the 3-bedroom rental units since the last plan. We're seeing 480 units that have been added. So that's plus 26% from the standpoint that we didn't start with that many in the first place, but it's still some
A
improvement.
little
at
side
least.
note to that is that a lot of those 480 units are luxury rentals. Those are the
Yes.
ones that have come up with 3 bedrooms onto
Yes,
the market,
they do.
not affordable housing.
Absolutely. The plus side on that is at least it relieves some of the pressure around the very, very few rental units that are larger. that are not in those buildings. At least it adds some supply into that market, but definitely agree that's what we've seen. Most of the growth is coming from those multifamily rental buildings that have been recently approved, so definitely. This is a map that we included that is showcasing the rent burden by census tracts. Do want to point out that there is one small outlier with the northwest census block showing the highest rent burden. That's simply because there's just really no rental in that area, and there is one property of senior care that's showing as the only rental building, and so the rent burden's showing really high. This is the one census block that's not tract that's not necessarily representative, but it gives you an idea of where the rent burden is particularly high in the city of Evanston.
Thanks for explaining that, because I was reading the draft of the comprehensive plan, and that was like the one thing on the map that really struck out to me, that I was like, that's really wild information. But thank you.
Yeah, we had to dig into the data and the census tracts and understand through other maps why, because it did not make sense. But essentially, it's just showcasing how little rentals there are in that area.
Could I make a quick side note to that? And it is on the rent burden that in Evanston is, if I'm reading it right, is 49.3%. And there is, and that's totally unhealthy. I think that for any family to spend 50% of their income, because that's gross income, on housing, it's just impossible to then have rice and beans every meal, or food with every meal. So what I see here is that during the RLTO meetings we heard, and there were some contradictions from one side or the other as to what the landlords are saying is to have no more than 1/3 of a family's income to use it as a qualifying for a family to be able to afford an apartment or to qualify for that apartment. And if we think about it on those terms from this side, but also from the other side, we see that there is a reason for that. And healthy landlords that are conscious about what they're doing, are saying 1/3 of your income is more than that is probably not healthy. How are you going to eat? How are you going to take your kid to the hospital if needs be? How are you going to repair your car? So not having a 49%, it's just leading us to losing affordability in our housing in our town. So we really need to try to, the ideal will be for the rents to lower to the 30% or 33%, so everybody can qualify for them. But that is not our society. That's called capitalism, and it's not going to happen, that rents are going to lower. So how do we approach that? I think that it'll be also an interesting to see what the city kind of puts into this to analyze that. Just a side note, sorry I went over
No, that's okay.
the limit of
Thank
time.
you. Okay, so as far as homelessness, a lot of the numbers for homelessness are coming from the point in time count that the continuum of care is doing. So not of all of those numbers are Evanston only, but we picked the north region of the continuum care, which includes Evanston. We've seen an increase in 13% overall in homeless population in the north region, an increase in 4% in chronic homelessness since the last plan, and 12% in homeless family with children. However, we're also seeing that emergency shelter programs served a lot more households. So while we're seeing an increase in homeless population, we're also seeing that the capacity is increasing to a certain extent. So that's the general update around where we're at. And there's a lot more numbers, including in the plan, but we're trying to provide you with some highlights or key points. So I wanted to mention the changes to the CDBG target area. When it comes to the consolidated plan, we get updated information that includes maps, updated maps of the low moderate income areas for Evanston, and we've discussed that in previous meeting. That's usually a map that looks very similar to that, but it highlights in yellow the census blocks that are 51% or more low moderate income households. From this map, we work on a CDBG target area map. Now that map currently is used mostly for our code enforcement program. Essentially, this map allows us to be able to identify areas where we would want to focus efforts as far as using CDBG funds, and which areas might have the highest need. Most of our programs are actually using other ways of qualifying the households are benefiting, whether it's income or anything else based on regulations. This map has been slightly updated. So this is the map that we were using in the last plan, which included a good chunk of Evanston. Evanston was in a slightly different place. We were coming off from the 2008 crisis. There had been a lot more foreclosures. So we've updated the map, which if you go to the next slide, it's a lot more focused this time. There's several reasons for this. We've seen different numbers. We've seen the number of low, moderate income households change in some blocks and drop quite a bit, so we did not include it. The aggregate of the areas of this map have to amount to at least 51% of low mod households. We are showing, so we've included less areas because we want to be able to focus our efforts. We have less funding. We're projecting less funding. We have a change in the low mod areas from the last plan. And we want to make sure that we're concentrating our efforts. Now, the map doesn't drive code enforcement activities. It only drives which one of the code enforcement activities are going to be eligible for CDBG funding. So it's simply a tool to be able to identify whether some of the activity is eligible to be billed under CDBG funding or it's billed under different funding. It does not change how we're approaching the code enforcement program specifically. And we do have reduced funding in the future. So since only 50% of this program is eligible for CDBG funding anyway, it made sense to us that we reduced the area and really focused on the areas with the highest need to be eligible for CDBG funding. Any questions on this?
Yep.
Okay. Quick note on a citizen participation plan. This is a document that we provided for your review and open for public comment through December, through the December meeting. We made some very minor change to the citizen participation plan. I do want to note that we are requested by HUD to call it citizen participation plan. This is not how we would personally choose to name it, but that's the requirement. The document usually outlines how we go about the engagement process and particularly how we go about the substantial amendment of any plan in the public outreach and participation. The changes that we made to the plan are fairly minor. We had to update it as part of COVID to include new legislation and changes into how we were doing public participation during crisis. So we've removed all of that and made it a little bit more broader to include just general state of emergency and have specific approach in remote participation in a case of emergency. We've made some other clarification. No real major changes to this plan have been made. I'd say the one clarification is about how we worded substantial amendments. Change to the goals. We've clarified that planning administration is excluded from that threshold because planning administration is set by the federal grant and we cannot go over a specific cap. So sometime that can kind of mess with the calculation of the goals. So we wanted to make sure that was very clear in this plan. With that said, the draft allocation, these two slides are very similar to the ones you've seen in the last meeting. So we've kept the proposed allocation the same as what we discussed last time. We've stayed fairly heavy on housing, affordable housing activities when possible. We've made the most reduction under public improvement in infrastructures and public facilities. One of the key items that I want to bring up tonight is that we're seeing lower we're projecting and allocating less funding to those activities. We are also seeing a slight change in how HUD is looking at those activities, such as alleys and sidewalk improvements. And as a result, we're most likely going to need to look at doing income surveys for every single household that's benefiting from the alley improvement. And so due to that, we are likely not going to propose any sidewalk improvement or public improvement for 2025, so that it gives us time to work with Public Works, really work out this process, identify the best projects under those rules, and come back to the committee with a combined funding that's actually able to carry the budget of an alley, because there's that as well, probably in 26 or later. There is some activities that are going to happen regardless, because in 25 they will be working on the parks that were voted last year that have been slightly delayed. So there's still going to be some activities, but as part of this plan, we're suggesting a hold on public improvements, particularly alleys, for next year.
Could I ask you a couple of questions on,
Yes.
on two things? One is on the alleys. You said that there'll be a survey of income per household on those alleys families that will benefit from the alley paving. Are those alleys identified yet?
No.
When are you planning to?
So we're planning on working, usually we'd work with Public Works, and we'd use the data from the low moderate income maps and work with their priority list and see which ones are CDBG eligible and come back to the committee next month. Because of how we're looking at changing how we do the income survey and qualification, we're probably going to work with Public Works on this for the next probably 6 months to put in place a new process to identify alleys, priorities, and then come back to the committee probably next year.
I'm surprised there is no master list of alleys that
there
need
is.
improvement, because there are some that are still mud, and it is what it is. When you buy your house, you know what you have behind your house, right? But there should be a master list,
There
so
is.
we should have a target, because if we're going to go knock on the door and say how much money you make, then I think that, there's got to be a list and say you're third in line or you're fourth in line.
Let me just clarify the effort. There is absolutely a master list of all the alleys that need to be done. What I don't have right now is a prioritized list of which alleys would be the right project for CDBG funding. So that is a subset of that master list.
Okay.
And what we need to work with Public Works, because as we look at going through the process, first we would identify potential contenders, and then we would do income survey. So we're not going to survey the entire city or every single household. We're going to specifically look at specific alleys that could be eligible. And once that's finalized, then we'll do the income survey.
That makes it clearer for me. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
The second is on the parks that have been approved for work to be
Mm-hmm.
done. So those are not included in this plan because that money has been already approved to be spent. So
Yes.
the money is sitting in a bank, hopefully making a little money so we can have more money, no money.
Right. The money is sitting with HUD. The money is allocated to us. We don't make money on it, but we haven't drawn it yet.
Oh, so we draw it
But we
as
will.
the work is being done. Got
Yes.
it. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
If the committee wishes, I can go through the spreadsheet of the allocation. We went through it last month. We'll go through it next month as well, but I'm available for any question. Or we can go over in more detail what's going on with the allocation.
So committee, would you like to see the spreadsheet or look at it in more detail next month? Anybody, one thought one way or the other? Because we also need to chat about.
I would rather look at it next month and have a little bit to discuss, have more discussion about the comprehensive plan.
Me too. Yeah.
As far as next steps, so next month is the vote on the draft plan, draft citizen participation plan, and the allocations. If you have any questions as you're reviewing the plan, I encourage you to send them to us by email so we can create some answers and include them in the packet so it's available for everybody to review and to have already before the meeting.
So do we need to do any kind of voting tonight?
No,
we're fine.
this is
Okay.
just an introduction.
Just an introduction, okay. And then now we can move on to our discussion of the Envision Evanston 2045 comprehensive plan.
I will move for discussion the Envision Evanston 2045 comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Second?
And we have a second, great. So. Okay, here we go. Yeah, Councilmember Harikars.
So we have this on our agenda. It said for the next 3 meetings, right? Or was it 2? I can't remember the.
Well, but if we have to, but our January meeting is after the date by which we're supposed to submit our written comment to council.
Yeah, we have through. I think that's a good starting point. So we're going to meet and discuss the comprehensive plan and give our notes for the January 15th.
Sarah, do you want to clarify what we're supposed to, what's expected of us?
You know, I don't honestly know what is expected of you on this.
Well, we're just
I'm
going
filling
by
in
we're
for-
going by the memo.
Right, I'm
Yeah.
filling in for
My-
Liz in this case. Can you explain?
My understanding is that if the committee wishes to do so, they're able to write a memo regarding this proposal and provide their feedback to City Council. And I believe that you're correct. I think it's by January. I also believe that as far as HCDC is concerned, my understanding is this is on this agenda. I don't know that it is planned to be on the December agenda, but it could be if they so wish.
I mean,
I'd say over the next 3 months, we're reviewing it then. That doesn't sort of add.
Because the whole plan, this is, we have just released the draft comprehensive plan, and the draft zoning is going to be coming out later this week. So there are going to be a number of discussions and presentations. The first hearing at Land Use Commission is tomorrow night, for example, and that's on the part of the comprehensive plan. So there are going to be a lot of other more information coming out. We haven't even released all the information. So what this is really I'm doing is giving you a background on what's been done so far. And then we need to make sure that you know when all the other meetings and other information is coming out so that you can then look at that.
Right,
And-
yeah. So I'm trying to understand, though, because the recommended action provides a 3-month time frame, which brings us into February. So what's happening in February that we're kind
Because
of...
in
that's
February,
what I'm
it will
trying
go
look
to City Council in
Okay.
theory. That's when the Land Use Commission will have made its recommendations to City Council in February. And information from other committees.
Including our committee.
Like ours.
Okay.
That this is relevant to, then get a chance to weigh in on.
Does
what they
our
think.
memo go to the Land Use Committee? Who else is getting our memo?
That we can discuss. If depending on the timing, it could go to Land Use Commission as a way of providing input to them, or it could go to City Council directly.
Thanks. Just trying
Okay.
to-
Or both, if you want to comment more than once. We get a lot of public comment, and it's important. It really is. but in addition to HCDC, preservation, and I think equity and empowerment, a number of other committees are also being asked to provide input if they so choose. It's not a requirement. It's really something that the committee hopefully would be looking at in terms of, does it support accomplishing goals that are important to this committee in terms of how housing is, how we address housing, but also community development needs as a whole, to provide equitable opportunity for everyone. Okay? So, this is a really quite, I probably should officially introduce myself, Sarah Flax, Community Development Director. This is a very focused planning process. We have released, as I say, the draft of the comprehensive plan. It's available on the city website. There is a survey that you can also fill out, which is very open-ended and says things like, hey, what do you think about this chunk? What do you think about this big chunk of information? Because we really are trying to get input from the community as a whole. It really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You don't do a comprehensive plan and new zoning every year. They're generally, it's a 20-year time period. And so what we are looking to talk about is what will happen and how will our city develop and change over the next 20 years. So the comprehensive plan is a shared vision for the future of our city with goals and strategies to achieve that vision, and the zoning is the law that is what then is in effect when it's approved as to how we actually allow development and other things. We have a multi-phased process here. Phase one was really lived experience. It was people throughout our community telling us what they like about Evanston, what they think is missing. It's really getting feedback from the community in many ways. Phase two, we had a visioning workshop, and there were a very diverse group of people who came together and spent most of a day in the Parasol room developing a vision. Phase three was pursuing our vision, again, refining those goals and developing land use scenarios. How could we develop different parts of our city? Phase four, which we are now in, is finalizing the plan and the code and releasing them. And then phase five will be the process that has just begun and will go through early next year to actually get both the plan and the zoning reviewed and approved. And we have been seeking input from people in our community throughout the entire process, and that's incorporated as we go. So in phase one, we had a whole lot of people involved. Many people responded to a survey. There were also a lot of different other ways people could be engaged and respond. We worked very closely with Cradle to Careers outreach organization to get to people who we normally don't hear a lot from. That included both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking outreach. So that was actually a wonderful balancing to who we get input from that was very valuable. And we've got some stats about the total number of people who were involved in this phase, over 2,800, which is really good because most of the time when you try to engage your community for something like this, you get about 1%. We're significantly above that. What did they say? Well, a lot of things. Wow, high cost of housing. What a surprise, huh? Need for transportation improvements. Preserve the community character. You know, you're here in Evanston for a reason. You like it. Enhance public spaces and activities. address public safety, and support local businesses and downtown vibrancy. So these were very, very common themes and feedback we heard. Developing our vision. This was our phase 2, and this is the vision that was developed by that community group that came together. I'm not going to read it because it's been up there a lot, but it really is saying what we need to do, how we need to make sure that we address both our housing needs and other needs like that, but also address climate change and these other global problems that are affecting our community, and how we achieve it. We achieve it through proactive planning, community collaboration, and bold action. Draft goals coming out of these phases. Prioritize environmental sustainability, create equitable opportunities for all, create a healthy community. And health is looked at very broadly. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, fiscal health for everybody. Celebrate arts and culture, increase housing diversity, establish a strong local economy. Sometimes you see that called a circular economy, where you actually you support all parts of your own economy by sort of recycling your money within your community as much as possible, and invest in active transportation. Phase 3 was another phase of community input, and this used a bunch of different techniques. One of the most effective was having pop-up events. You go where people are, you don't ask them to come to where you are, and you do sort of intercepts and interviews and get input from them. And in that July period, we received feedback from over 300 people at various sites throughout our community. We also had some organizational meetings, and organizational meetings really meetings with organizations that are significant of significant size, and we need their input on. Endeavor Health and Northwestern University were among those. So this led to refinement of those goals and strategies, and what staff presented to City Council as potential bold steps. So the observations and the bold steps. We are running out of land and people can't find housing. Okay, how can we address that? Identifying growth centers and corridors in our city that are ideal for more development. We heard that we don't want the whole community to change. There are some really important elements to Evanston that everybody wants to maintain, and so also for transportation reasons and energy efficiency reasons, a lot of reasons support having growth centers and corridors that can be an effective way to do that. Encouraging housing choice by allowing duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in all neighborhoods. And what this really means is up to 4 units. And when we put it in duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, sometimes people go, oh my God, are we going to get a whole bunch of 4-unit buildings popping up all over the place? Certainly not rapidly, but there are also ways that we can creatively renovate existing large homes into multiple units. Some of you may know that was done with the District 65, what was an enormous mansion that District 65 had as its headquarters on the northwest corner of Dempster and Ridge. That was beautifully rehabbed into condominiums. Not affordable, but they were rehabbed, and then they used the outlots. So, you know, there are things that could be done to properties that could give us more units. ADUs are one way that we could get more units. Lots of different things. House people, not cars. Eliminate parking minimums. Now, that doesn't mean we're eliminating parking. What it means is we are letting the market say what parking is needed and where. There was an article in the New York Times recently about New York's having these minimums and having this enormous hole dug to try to build incredibly expensive underground housing for affordable housing units, which are not likely to have a need for cars because most people at those income levels simply don't have them, especially in New York. So, in our country, we have policies to build enormous amounts of parking when it isn't even needed. In many of the high-rises that have been built in relatively recent years, they have excess parking. So, oops. Okay, I missed one. Families that have lived here for generations are being pushed out, and children who grew up here can't afford to come back. We really are concerned about displacement of our lower income residents. That's something we have to look to protect and address. So we've got to develop an anti-displacement strategy, which will probably require multiple ways to approach that. And again, increasing density in identified growth centers and corridors to increase the tax base. So we have a rich fabric of people, but we do not have enough spaces and places for them to experience fun, joy, and happiness. So how can we do things like activate streets, whether it's for full-time, closing streets to just pedestrians and bikes, for example, or just weekend festivals, all those different things that we can do that can bring people together. How can we look for mixed-use developments that can integrate green space? It can be mixed use or it can be just housing. How can we integrate green space into more places? How can we remove barriers and allow more events and arts throughout the community? So there are a lot of different ways we can address these things. The current code is complicated and difficult to use, and the approval process is unpredictable. It is. We have something like 34 zoning districts, I think it is. Wow, that's a lot. Plus we have overlays, and it's very difficult to figure out and navigate our zoning code. What can you do on what property, and how many variations do you have to do? We have areas where lots are zoned that are non-conforming. This is very common in our R1 and R2, which is single unit housing on a lot. And our minimum lot size in single family in R1 is 7,200 square feet, which is a pretty big lot. And we did an analysis, and just under 50% are non-conforming, are smaller than that requirement. So, wow, that does make it hard, because the minute you're trying to do anything, you could run up against that, against having to request variations, which can take time, cost more. Our plan development process and approval process is very rigorous, and it needs to be, but it is also very complicated in terms of, again, we have developers asking for variations on almost everything that's built of any scale. And that takes time and costs money. And for developers, certainty. What can I do? What do I not have to go through a whole lot of hoops? So we just have to make clearer code that will get us to what kind of development we need. Okay, another thing we did to refine goals and strategies, we had a series of focus groups with various groups of people from different parts of our business community, different residential groups, all kinds of things. So we had jobs in the economy, the development community itself, where we did hear about, clean up that code. Design professionals, what do we want Evanston to look and feel like? Housing and community development. Social gathering places, equity and prosperity, transportation and mobility, land use in the built environment, and arts and culture. All of these groups provided their input on what we need in Evanston and what they're happy with and what they're not happy with. From that, we did a development scenario workshop, and this was actually working together to say, what could we do with certain sites? What can, this is really an Envision Evanston 2045. What might certain areas in our community look like in 20 years? And we had various different places that we looked at. So sometimes you can talk about things and you can put words on paper, but when you start seeing 3D things popping up and saying, oh, that's what that means. Wow, I don't know if I like that, or wow, that's really interesting. So this was another way to just get input. Participate to be heard. We asked people to take a questionnaire. They could schedule office hours to come in and talk with planning staff. They could do an ask a question, and we also had a share your big idea. What wonderful ideas do you have that we should consider? So kind of different ways for people who think differently and provide input differently to be able to provide their input. Next steps. Where are we now? Okay, the draft comprehensive plan was posted on November 5th. So it's out there, and there's a survey, as I said, for people to respond, and there are other ways to provide input too. Zoning map and districts will be, and more of the zoning information will actually be published by this Friday, probably much before that. Maybe even starting as soon as tomorrow, the zoning map and the districts. So it's coming out in different pieces, but throughout this week. We are going to have town hall meetings, and those are in the process of being scheduled. And those are actually going to be in December, but I couldn't figure out how to make this thing truly linear because the next stage went from November to January, so sorry about that. But we're going to try to get, again, groups of people together to talk. One of the first ones that is being scheduled is one in the downtown area, specifically to get people talking about that area. We're working with the 3 council members who have whose wards comprise the downtown area. And all of the information as this stuff is developed will be on the Envision Evanston website. Land Use Commission. Tomorrow is the first of the actual hearings about the comprehensive plan at the Land Use Commission. So that's the first of 3 meetings that are scheduled for the comprehensive plan. And then there are 3 more meetings that are scheduled for the actual zoning. And these are going to overlap. So the first comprehensive plan one is this tomorrow, and the first zoning one is going to be on December 4th. So they'll all be on the Envision Evanston 2045 schedule, but they will also be on the city calendar. And so there's a lot of land use meetings coming up. Thanks to our Land Use Commission for agreeing to take on all these additional meetings because it really is important. They are all my expectation is a great deal of tomorrow's meeting will be input because there's that's the hearing portion of it. But then on each of those topics, the Land Use Commission has to come to a recommendation at its 3rd meeting. So that's a November through January process. In February, which is, sorry, that's blocked out by this bizarre green and red thing, is when these recommendations go to City Council. And it's our expectation that there will be 3 meetings again there, at least that's what we're expecting will happen. But that's the process and the timing that's related. And so we don't have the full information from which, at this point, I think this committee would want to make any recommendations or comments. But It may be, we can discuss and see what else is going on. There may be a way to, and it might be appropriate to have this on one of the meetings after a lot more of the information is out and everybody's had time to absorb it and think about it, and put together your thoughts and recommendations or concerns or whatever for city council or land use, and I think it could be to either one. Any questions?
Yeah, Fran, go ahead.
Hi, in some ways I'm overwhelmed by the amount of work you've done, so this is a lot to take in. My first question is regarding the focus group composition. We have ladies here tonight who express concerns about issues they have in their living environments, and I'm wondering what, I don't want to overstep myself, but I'm just wondering what kind of, was there a diverse representation in these focus groups as we went along? Because I keep hearing some of these same concerns brought before the committee, and they're valid, and I do believe that these concerns need to be incorporated into any plan. So what was the approach to do these focus groups?
The focus groups had both targeted lists of people who were brought forward as names of who might be relevant for the specific sort of topic, but also they were published and encouraged through our, anyone could go to them through a wide variety of things, including our city e-news and social media and things like that. I will admit it is sometimes hardest to get our lowest income people who we need to hear from to meetings like that. A huge thing is often scheduling, but one of the areas where we did get, I think quite effectively to at least a major portion of our low-income population was through the outreach that was done by the Cradle to Career and Latino outreach during the phase one. And we do have comments from people who, at various of our meetings and other outreach. Also, I think we would have gotten some of this at some of the intercepts because those were targeted at places that everybody goes. Valley grocery store,
Sure.
Everybody goes to Valley practically. And there were specific sites sought that we went to that would get to different racial and ethnic groups. And so there was certainly an attempt to get to a very broad range of people.
That's great. Yeah, I just didn't know, so that's why I'm asking.
Sure.
Another question I had, and this is a generic question, and it may not even be relevant to this point in your presentation, so if it isn't, we'll just bump it to sometime later. Well, two things. The green, I would call it the green team or the green initiative to use that and incorporate that into your plan. Is there, I think there's a group in Evanston, are there groups in Evanston that emphasize green concepts, and were they brought into this
Absolutely.
phase? I mean, I just don't know.
Yes, no, but absolutely, yes. We have our groups that are very focused on all kinds of different things. In fact, there is, in the plan is a whole section on the environment. And we just noticed that we really need to put something in that portion of the plan about exterior lighting because dark skies is a big thing. And one of the problems is, we talk about our bird-friendly glass and all that stuff to try to keep birds from running into things, but a lot of lights, especially lights that go up, are disorienting to birds and other critters that are in our natural environment, and those are things we really need to look at. And so we are constantly, we got feedback on that, and it's like, yep, we got to be looking at that and making sure that's in there.
Great. Third thing, and then I'll stop, is that there is unused retail space in every city, unfortunately.
Yes.
And that, I think that is a huge issue, but also a potential source of repurposing and housing. And in fact, some cities have done this kind of creatively. And I know plumbing is a huge issue in repurposing, but they've actually like located all the plumbing and areas that require water in the central part of a building, and then put housing. And so I think some of and also they're doing this in Europe.
Yes.
I just got back. And so this is not unusual, but I think it's something we need to continue to look at, and I don't know where that lands in any of this, but I won't stop talking about it.
You know, what's
because I think it's
interesting is
important.
we've actually been having adaptive reuse of buildings that were not built as housing in Evanston recently, some really interesting ones. The Varsity Theater, for example.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's now been
Sonic
redeveloped as
Temple, too.
housing.
Yeah.
Sojourners Church, which is on Church Street, just west of Oak Avenue, has also been redeveloped, both as housing. One of the things we're looking at in our zoning changes is historically there were certain areas where you didn't allow housing on the ground floor. And that's being looked at everywhere. You know what? That can be a deal killer, and you can end up making your own problem because you're saying, well, the ground floor in these mixed-use developments has to be retail or commercial. Well, you know, if we don't have a need for the stores, that's not a good idea. But you can have things that activate the street the same way. You can have their fitness center. You can encourage. This is part of the thing about encouraging public space mixed into private space, whether it's outdoor or whether it is a community room that other people who aren't necessarily living in upper floors on the building can use. So there's a lot of opportunity to look at things differently from what we have done. And I think that's really, really critical. And thank you for those points, Fran.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
Anything else?
Councilmember Heracott.
Yeah, I just want to echo, thank you for all the hard work that your staff has done on really engaging the community. You know, I think I had a ward meeting in the spring, and we had a session where we, you know, filled out questionnaires. We had the big map. I think we see it some in the plan. I think there's some really interesting information that, like, I was not aware that we'd be gathering that kind of is going to inform like our traffic and mobility efforts. Like one of my favorite things was like pointing out places you like in the city or places you find problematic or dangerous. So like, you know, I think this has been extremely useful. You know, there's a lot of, you know, I think I've read through this, I think twice, and I still feel like I need to read through it probably 2 more times to really get, you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this translates into, because I see everything here, I'm like, yes, let's do that. Let's do that too. I'm really curious to see what the draft zoning, like how that, you know, translates into the zoning changes. I'll have a quick plug. I think it's December, I don't want to say the wrong date here. Next December 10th, staff will be presenting what Envision Evanston 2045 means for the 9th Ward specifically. We're going to have an information session so people can kind of see like what this means for, you know, our neighborhood in general and the town overall. So, but I think one of the key things that we didn't get into, in that it's not, like, I think the gentle infill with like, you know, allowing like the 2 flats, the 3 flats, the 4 flats. one thing I was not aware of, and, in talking to staff, learned that, the building size and height and setbacks are going to stay the same. So,
Or very
one of the,
similar. There
or
might
very
be little
similar,
changes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I know that I've heard as a concern is that, well, we're going to have like one monstrosity in the middle of our block. And that's, I think, there's been some really thoughtful planning in this. And so that, you might have a single-family home go away and have a like-sized building that fits into the character of the neighborhood go up. But I think, this kind of like reinforced a lot of things that I've always heard, like, I love living here. I wish my kids could move back here. They want to move back here, but they can't. And so I think, we have to increase the housing supply as much as possible. And I think this is a really great start, and just looking forward to keep on doing the work here.
Thank you. And our staff is amazing. They have done a fabulous job, and they're going to continue doing it because there's a lot ahead of us. But one thing that really is important is this, both the plan and the zoning when it comes out are drafts. And we can't reinforce that too much. We want input. That's the whole purpose of the time to get input and be able to really address communities' questions. And there are going to be changes because you can't take on something of this scale. You have to start with something on paper and something in the way of maps that people can look at and really talk about how this is, what this will turn into. And that's absolutely critical. Please encourage people to provide input, and we can talk about how to provide this committee more information at different times and make it easier for you to form a recommendation or your feedback on it as well, if that is appropriate.
Go ahead.
So so what would be the most, I guess, and this goes for my colleagues up here too, do you think if we all read this and come up with notes and then compile something to share after the next meeting, would that be, because I think we could have, like the land use committee, we could have 6 meetings about all the minutia, right? But for staff, what would be the most effective way to get would it be like a compilation of thoughts from all of us that we send in? And asking.
To some extent, we want to leave that to the committee, whether you want to just provide your input or if you want to discuss it and address certain things, or what. Any one of them can work. I think, and maybe it's just because I've worked a long time on CDBG and things like that, one of the things I would really like to see is if you feel that this plan will support the goals of trying to provide equitable opportunity to more people in our community. And does this give us a framework that will allow us to address our need for housing and our need for more affordable housing? It won't solve it just from this, but does it give us the regulations and the platform to be able to do those things? And I think that's very important for this committee to consider.
Yep. Fran?
Yeah, my first reaction when I read this through for the first time was that it's so intricately interwoven with what happens with zoning. And, I wish you well with that because I could see where almost this whole plan would turn on how well that goes.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I don't know what you need from us to address what's already been said. How can we, or what could we do to support that, I guess?
Well, the draft zoning will be coming out and the maps. And I think something that's really important that to me is more accessible than some of the more detailed zoning code, which can be kind of mind-numbing no matter how much you try to simplify it, is looking at things like the new zoning districts, the way we're setting up the zoning districts, or the way we've tried to define them. Does this make sense? One of our goals, as we've talked about as a community, is we're economically diverse, but internally we're economically segregated. We really are. If this is something that, are we looking at things that would allow us to overcome any of that? These are the types of things that I guess I would sort of hope to hear your feedback on, because I think that those are, as a committee that makes recommendations on how we spend money to try to address those issues, you have some insight and some time that you've spent working on these issues that I think is very valuable for us to hear.
Well, I'd like to pick up on, I think maybe Councilmember Harikara's suggestion that if we all took some time well before the next meeting to put together any thoughts we might have and send them all to staff, so that then they could be compiled, and then we'd have something then as a committee to discuss at our December meeting, rather than, just sort of waiting until the meeting to share our thoughts. So we actually can, and particularly I think focusing on to what extent do we think the plan does or needs more input to achieve the goals that we promote here in this committee. So that could be the main focus of our thoughts. So, yeah, Juan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think looking at, like, if we agree what the strategy and how to fix these problems, the housing issues, and then also I think, as far as the zoning code goes, taking a look at that, and if there's anything that we have like major questions about, I think it's fair to, bring them, because I'm sure if there are committee members that have major questions about certain policies or certain zoning directives, they're probably not the only one in the community. I think it'd be a worthwhile discussion to talk about those things too.
Sure.
So,
yeah, and that could be maybe questions or issues that you particularly see that, again, we can prepare to respond to or provide you information to discuss from.
Right. So I think we are suggesting that we would like to have some time on the agenda for our next meeting to talk about all this.
Let me just check with Marion to see.
Send them to Marion?
Hang on one second. Let me just let Marion weigh in on what our December agenda looks like.
Right.
So December agenda should be no problem. We have less public improvement applications since we're putting things on hold. So we can add this to the agenda.
Well, that's good.
As far as sending an email, I think probably Liz Williams probably would be a good starting point.
I'd rather that we have somebody, because Liz gets a million things. I'd rather make sure that we know it's all from the committee, that we don't just get things lost. So if we can have it go to someone in the Housing and Grants group who can compile it, I think that would be helpful, just because I don't want it to get possibly just mixed in with and lost with anyone else.
Right.
You can probably email Anna or reply to any of the recent email about HCDC.
Okay. So that's our assignment. And the zoning is basically out, I think. Yeah.
It hasn't been posted yet publicly,
it's,
or it might
by
have been
tomorrow, I think
the
it will
first
be,
part,
yeah.
which is going to be is the zoning map and the
Right.
districts. And
Right, yeah.
I'm not sure if it actually got up on the website
Right, it's-
today,
yeah,
but it
it's
will be
part-
very
yeah,
shortly.
right.
And then the rest of it will be coming
Soon.
shortly thereafter.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Great, well, thank you.
Well, thank you all, because I do think that this committee's input is very valuable to that.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, well, I think maybe, so the agenda says staff reports and updates. Is there something more?
Yes, just
Okay.
a couple of quick things. So my first update is we kind committee member Hugo Rodriguez is actually attending his last meeting today, so I wanted to thank him for his participation to HCDC, for his dedication, for the time he spent.
So not even coming to December meeting, you mean?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see after I read it, after I
Yeah,
read the
please
entire
send us-
report,
send-
200,
send- go ahead
200
and send your
pages of
thoughts.
report, maybe I'll have a comment, of course. The zoning part of it, I think is going to be critical for anybody to formulate any feedback to the proposal is. It sounds grand, but I think that it still needs a lot of time to it. I wanted to thank the city and everybody in the city to have allowed me the opportunity to serve in this committee. It's been a humbling experience in many ways. All the stuff that I don't know about how our city works, what our city needs, what are the members of our community, and in particular the members of our community that are more vulnerable to be left behind. I am definitely a strong advocate of affordable housing, and I'm going to continue my work, even if it's behind the scenes, coming here and make public comment when I deem is necessary. But I think that if we lose affordable housing, we will definitely continue to see our homeless population grow. And homelessness is a housing problem, nothing else. We can say it's a mental health issue, we can say it's an addictions issue, but it is a really affordable housing. We lose housing, we create we create homeless. So the other word for homeless is unhoused. So that says it clearly. It's a housing problem, and we need to continue to work on that. I think that this committee has a critical role within our city to continue to be vigilant, to continue to advocate for the ones who needs it the most. I think that as any other good city, we see the growth, we see the multiplication of beautiful luxury houses and buildings, but that's not the entirety of our community. We have to look for the ones who are in need of our help. And thank you all for all your taking my ways of addressing my thoughts with you. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate Chair Revelle for your guidance and your good work with this, and the extra work you took with me. I appreciate it a million. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well,
Thanks for staff too, also for your support. I'm going to try to see if I can persuade the city clerk of a third term, but I don't think it'll be granted though. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Hugo, for your advocacy, and you've been a passionate advocate for, people who really needed a passionate advocate up here, and we really appreciate your sharing your point of view, and we hope we'll see you at least giving us some public comment whenever you feel we need to hear from you.
Don't worry.
Okay, right, yeah. Marion, anything else?
Yes, I wanted to provide you an update that, so we will have 7 active committee members for the December meeting. I urge you to be present at the December meeting. We really need to meet quorum to be able to have vote on the 5-year plan, the action plan, and the allocation. It would be very, very negative impact for the city if we're not able to meet quorum. The meeting is December 17th. If you already foresee potential challenges to be present, if you could reach out to staff, I would really appreciate it. We will reach out to everybody in the coming weeks too, as well. And then the last update, Uri asked me to share that the strategic housing plan timeline has been delayed a little bit as staff bandwidths and capacity is impacted by the Envision, Evanston, and the comprehensive plan effort, which have been taking a lot of their bandwidths. So we're not forgetting about this plan, but the timeline is a little bit delayed. It's also kind of nested as this plan will work in relation to the comprehensive plan, and we plan to bring it up again to HCDC, just not in the same timeline.
Right, okay. Yep, no.
I just had a question.
Yes, go ahead,
I was
Joanne.
just wondering, what is happening with the property at Emerson and Jackson that the city bought?
We're actually working on that right now. That is one of the, I don't know if everyone's aware of putting assets to work, which is this look at city properties and what we can do. And the question is, how do we roll that into that work effectively so that we aren't doing one-offs all the time, that we're looking at things collectively. But that is a priority for looking at how to redevelop that property. And it will likely have a great deal of community input, which is very important on what goes there. But we're working on it.
And that is it for staff update.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, then, we are all adjourned until December 17th. Was that the date? Yep, see everybody then.